Hello everyone, I am Joseph, the host of Wake Up Call. The United States is known as the country with the largest economy, and therefore it can be said that it is the greatest economic power in the world. However, it is suffering from enormous debt. As of 2023, the US produced $26 trillion, accounting for 24% of the world's total production. Despite this, as of 2023, the United States had a debt exceeding $33 trillion. The production is $26 trillion, but the debt is $33 trillion. This is a serious issue, isn't it? Also, the debt is increasing at an extremely rapid pace. Experts are saying that interest alone increases by $100,000 every 3 seconds. I can't even imagine how that is actually possible. Have you ever been in serious deep debt? As we live, it would be good for us not to have any debt. However, life is full of ups and downs, and there are times when we find ourselves in debt due to unavoidable circumstances. Personally, I know a little about how difficult it is to be in debt. However, there are those who aren't concerned about going into enormous debt. There are people who think it's completely normal. When we look at the lives of these people, even if they have money to spare, they use it to buy what they want and do what they want, instead of paying back the debt. It's very unfortunate to see how they live. If they don't prioritize repaying their debt and gaining financial freedom as soon as possible, but instead keep putting their own desires first, it will be difficult for them to ever escape from debt. And in the case of such people, the reason they go into debt is often not because it is absolutely necessary. They take on debt simply because they want to do something, even when they cannot afford it. Without considering their financial situation, they take on debt to do what they want, while little interest in repaying it. Instead, they continue borrowing it to fulfill their desires. When we see something like that, we would likely think that they are not acting rationally. Wouldn't you agree? If such a person came up to you and said, "Please lend me some money so I can pay off my debt," would you be willing to lend it to them without hesitation? Wouldn't we be suspicious of that person? It'd be natural for us to have doubtful thoughts, such as, instead of paying back the debt, he might do something else again with the money I lend him. And preventing them from doing so would be the right thing to do. That would be the response of someone who truly cares about them. How about us? Are we trying to pay back our debt? If someone gives us the amount of money we need to pay back the debt, but instead of paying back the debt, we find ourselves living in more debt. What do I mean by this? Here is Romans chapter 8, verse 12. Therefore, brothers and sisters, we have an obligation, but it is not to the flesh to live according to it. This is saying that if we are in debt, we have no obligation to pay back the debt. A person who has debt but does not pay back the debt is an irresponsible person. Romans chapter 8 verse 12 says we are debtors. What kind of debt do we have? In fact, we are in debt because of sin. To be more precise, we are indebted to the wages of sin. Since the wages of sin is death, all of us have a debt that must be paid with our own lives for our sins. But God sent His one and only Son, Jesus Christ, the one who had no sin, died on the cross, and instead paid the wages of my sin. He paid the debt of death, which was the wages of sin. Therefore, we no longer have to be involved with sin. We have no reason to live by the flesh. It's because when we live by the flesh, we find ourselves in debt again. Thus, Romans chapter 8 verse 12 says, Therefore, brothers and sisters, we have an obligation, but it is not the flesh to live according to it. We are no longer in debt of the flesh. Therefore, we must not live according to the flesh, but live by the Spirit. If someone is in a lot of debt and he cannot repay it, but then someone stepped in and paid off his debt, what should the freed person do next? He must rejoice that he has found freedom from the debt that was paid and live carefully so he won't ever be in debt again. However, if they neither appreciate the debt being paid nor fear falling into debt again, then that person is truly unaware of their situation. Likewise, if we, as Christians, continue to pursue the desires of the flesh even after being saved, then we are just like that person who has not come to their senses. Romans chapter 8 verses 5 through 14 says, "Those who live according to the flesh have their minds set on what the flesh desires. But those who live in accordance with the Spirit have their minds set on what the Spirit desires. The mind governed by the flesh is death, but the mind governed by the Spirit is life and peace. The mind governed by the flesh is hostile to God. It does not submit to God's law, nor can it do so. Those who are in the realm of the flesh cannot please God. You, however, are not in the realm of the flesh, but are in the realm of the Spirit, if indeed the Spirit of God lives in you. And if anyone does not have the Spirit of Christ, they do not belong to Christ. But if Christ is in you, then even though your body is subject to death because of sin, the Spirit gives life because of righteousness. And if the Spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead is living in you, he who raised Christ from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies because of his Spirit who lives in you. Therefore, brothers and sisters, we have an obligation, but it is not to the flesh to live according to it. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die, but if by the Spirit you put to death the misdeeds of the body, you will live. For those who are led by the Spirit of God are children of God." Beloved Heart and Soul Gospel Ministry listeners, have all your debts been paid or are paying as agreed? And are you making an effort to never fail into deep debt again? The Bible clearly tells us that if we live according to the flesh, we are hostile to God, and we cannot please God, and it will lead to death. But now, the promised Spirit of Jesus Christ, the Spirit of God, dwells within us. Therefore, with the help of the Spirit, we have put the deeds of our flesh to death, and became children of God by living by the leading of the Spirit of God. Are you a child of God? How can you prove that you are a child of God? I hope you can examine yourself through the Word. If you live according to the flesh, then you are not a child of God. If you live by the Spirit and put the deeds of the flesh to death, then you are a child of God. I hope that you and I, dear listeners, will live each day with the assurance of whose children we are, according to the Word. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.